At 11:47 p.m. on October 15, 2023, Detective Carol Bennett received a phone call that would shatter everything she thought she knew about her own community. The caller was frantic, barely coherent, reporting a missing person who hadn't returned home from what should have been a routine collaboration meeting. What started as a standard missing person case would ultimately expose one of the most disturbing betrayals of trust in modern true crime history. Welcome back to our channel, where we explore the cases that remind us how darkness can hide behind the most trusted faces in our communities. If you find value in these deep investigations into the human condition, please subscribe and hit that notification bell, because today's story will fundamentally change how you view the people around you. The victim was 22-year-old Chloe Anderson, a rising YouTube creator with 850,000 subscribers who built her following through lifestyle content and mental health advocacy. Her channel, Real Talk with Chloe, attracted viewers with her authentic discussions about anxiety, college life, and finding purpose in your 20s. Chloe had that rare quality that made her audience feel like they were talking to their best friend, genuine, relatable, and deeply caring about the people who watched her videos. Chloe lived in Millbrook Valley, California, a community of 45,000 people nestled between rolling hills and suburban developments. It's the kind of place where neighbors still wave to each other, where local coffee shops know your order by heart, and where high school football games draw half the town on Friday nights. Chloe had moved there 2 years earlier, drawn by the affordable rent and the tight-knit community feel that seemed perfect for a young creator building her brand. But Millbrook Valley had another draw for Chloe. It was home to someone she deeply admired, someone whose reputation in the community was nothing short of legendary. His name was Robert "Bobby" Stevens, and if you lived in Millbrook Valley, you knew Bobby Stevens. For 15 years, he had been the volunteer coordinator at the Millbrook Community Center, organizing everything from youth basketball leagues to senior citizen meal programs. He coached Little League Baseball every spring, ran the annual Christmas toy drive that brought presents to over 300 local children, and somehow always seemed to appear whenever someone in the community needed help. Bobby was 43 years old, unmarried, and completely devoted to what he called giving back to the place that raised me. He had grown up in Millbrook Valley, graduated from Millbrook High in 1998, and after a brief stint working construction in Los Angeles, returned home in 2008 with a mission to make his community better. Local newspaper profiles described him as the heart of Millbrook Valley and the man who proves one person can make a difference. Parents trusted Bobby Stevens with their children. Seniors relied on him for rides to medical appointments. Local business owners sponsored his programs because they knew every dollar would go exactly where Bobby said it would go. In 15 years of volunteer work, not a single person had ever questioned Bobby Stevens' character or motives. Chloe Anderson first encountered Bobby in March 2023, when she attended a community meeting about establishing a mental health resource center for local teenagers. Bobby was presenting his proposal for the center, complete with detailed budgets, volunteer schedules, and partnership agreements with local therapists. Chloe was impressed not just by the thoroughness of his planning, but by his genuine passion for helping young people struggling with anxiety and depression. After the meeting, Chloe approached Bobby with an idea. What if she used her platform to raise awareness and funds for the mental health center? Her audience was exactly the demographic the center aimed to serve, and she had successfully organized fundraising campaigns before. Bobby was enthusiastic about the collaboration, praising Chloe's authentic connection with young people and her real understanding of mental health challenges. Over the next 7 months, Chloe and Bobby worked together on what they called the Real Hope Project. Chloe created a series of videos highlighting mental health resources, interviewing local therapists, and sharing her own experiences with anxiety. Bobby appeared in several videos, discussing the community center's programs and the planned mental health initiative. The collaboration was incredibly successful. Chloe's audience donated over $47,000 to the project, and the mental health center was scheduled to open in January 2024. But here's where the story takes its first disturbing turn. While Chloe was publicly celebrating their partnership and the success of the Real Hope Project, Bobby Stevens was developing what investigators would later describe as an unhealthy fixation on the young creator. According to digital forensics analysis conducted after his arrest, Bobby spent an average of 6 hours per day consuming Chloe's content. Not just her latest videos, but everything she had ever posted. He watched her old live streams, studied her Instagram stories, and created detailed notes about her daily routines, her favorite locations, and her personal relationships. Bobby had installed monitoring software on the community center's computers that allowed him to track Chloe's online activity. He knew when she posted new content before her own subscribers did. He had created fake social media accounts to interact with her posts and gain insights into her personal life. Most disturbingly, he had been photographing Chloe during their meetings and public appearances, building what investigators would later discover was a collection of over 2,000 images stored on encrypted drives in his home. Think about this for a moment. While Chloe believed she was working with a trusted community leader on a project to help young people, that same person was systematically violating her privacy and developing what can only be described as an obsession. What does this tell us about how predators operate, especially those who use positions of trust to access their victims? I'd love to hear your thoughts in the comments. The Real Hope Project was scheduled to culminate with a special fundraising event on October 16, 2023. Chloe and Bobby had planned to film a final collaboration video at the community center that evening, showcasing the completed mental health resource room and announcing the center's January opening date. Chloe was excited about the project's success and posted an Instagram story that afternoon showing her preparing for what she called the most important video I've ever made. Chloe arrived at the Millbrook Community Center at 8:30 p.m., just as she and Bobby had planned. The building was empty except for Bobby, who had volunteered to stay late to give Chloe access to the new mental health resource room. According to the timeline reconstructed by investigators, Chloe and Bobby spent approximately 45 minutes filming in the resource room, with Chloe conducting what she believed would be a standard interview about the center's impact on the community. But at 9:15 p.m., something changed. Security camera footage from the community center's parking lot shows Chloe's car remaining in the same parking spot, but no activity around the building. Her phone's last GPS ping was recorded at 9:17 p.m. from inside the community center. After that, Chloe Anderson simply vanished. When Chloe failed to return home that night, her roommate, Ashley, initially wasn't alarmed. Chloe sometimes stayed late editing videos or meeting with other creators. But when Chloe didn't respond to texts the next morning and missed a scheduled brand partnership call, something Chloe would never do without notice, Ashley knew something was wrong. Ashley called Chloe's parents, who immediately drove to Millbrook Valley from their home in San Diego. Together, they went to the community center, where Bobby Stevens was conducting his regular Tuesday morning senior exercise class. Bobby appeared genuinely concerned when they explained Chloe's disappearance, immediately offering to help search for her and providing them with the footage of their collaboration session the previous evening. The video Bobby provided showed Chloe interviewing him about the mental health center, discussing future plans, and expressing her excitement about the project's impact. Nothing in the footage suggested any tension or conflict between them. Chloe appeared relaxed and engaged throughout the 45-minute recording session. The video ended with Chloe thanking Bobby for his partnership and saying she would edit the content that evening for posting the next day. But here's what investigators would later discover. The video Bobby provided was not the complete recording of that evening. Advanced digital forensics revealed that approximately 23 minutes of footage had been carefully edited out of the original file. The metadata showed the original recording was 68 minutes long, not the 45 minutes Bobby had provided to police and Chloe's family. The Millbrook Valley Police Department initially treated Chloe's disappearance as a missing person case. Detective Bennett, who had been with the department for 12 years, began by interviewing Chloe's friends, family, and recent contacts. Everyone described Chloe as reliable, organized, and deeply committed to her content creation career. The idea that she would simply disappear without notice was completely out of character. Bobby Stevens was interviewed multiple times during the first week of the investigation. He consistently maintained that Chloe had left the community center around 9:15 p.m., saying she planned to go home and edit their collaboration video. He provided his phone records, which showed no calls or texts to Chloe after their meeting. He gave investigators access to the community center security system and volunteered to take a polygraph test. Bobby's behavior during these interviews was exactly what you would expect from someone genuinely concerned about a missing community member. He offered to organize volunteer search parties, provided investigators with contact information for other people who had worked with Chloe on the Real Hope project, and repeatedly expressed his hope that Chloe would be found safe. But Detective Bennett noticed something that bothered her. During their third interview, Bobby mentioned specific details about Chloe's personal life that seemed to go beyond what would be normal knowledge for a collaborative partner. He knew Chloe's favorite coffee order, her college roommate's name, and personal struggles she had mentioned in videos for months before their partnership began. When Detective Bennett asked Bobby how he knew these details, he explained that he had watched Chloe's content extensively to better understand her audience for their collaboration. The break in the case came on October 23rd, 8 days after Chloe's disappearance. A maintenance worker at the Millbrook Community Center discovered what appeared to be blood evidence in the building's basement storage area, a space that Bobby Stevens had exclusive access to as volunteer coordinator. The blood tested positive for Chloe's DNA. With probable cause established, investigators obtained warrants to search Bobby Stevens' home and to conduct a comprehensive forensic analysis of the community center. What they discovered would shock even experienced investigators who thought they had seen everything. Bobby's home contained what investigators described as a shrine to Chloe Anderson. An entire room had been converted into what can only be called a stalking headquarters. The walls were covered with printed screenshots from Chloe's social media accounts, timeline charts tracking her daily activities, and detailed notes about her personal relationships and professional commitments. Investigators found over 50 notebooks filled with Bobby's handwriting, documenting everything from Chloe's workout schedule to her favorite restaurants to speculation about her romantic relationships. The notebooks revealed that Bobby had been following Chloe for months before their official collaboration began, often appearing at locations she had mentioned in her videos or social media posts. Perhaps most disturbing was Bobby's collection of what he called interaction logs, detailed records of every conversation he had with Chloe, including his interpretations of her facial expressions, tone of voice, and what he believed were signals that she was interested in him romantically. These logs revealed a complete disconnect from reality, with Bobby interpreting normal professional courtesy as romantic interest. The forensic analysis of Bobby's electronic devices revealed the full scope of his obsession. He had downloaded every video Chloe had ever posted, along with thousands of photos from her social media accounts. He had created detailed spreadsheets tracking her posting schedule, engagement rates, and subscriber growth. Most alarmingly, he had been using sophisticated photo editing software to create fake intimate images of Chloe, which he had been sharing in online forums dedicated to what investigators classified as non-consensual fantasy content. But the evidence that would ultimately prove Bobby's guilt was found on his personal laptop. Hidden in encrypted folders were video files from the October 15th meeting at the community center. The complete, unedited footage that revealed what actually happened that night. The missing 23 minutes of video showed Bobby's demeanor changing dramatically after the official interview concluded. When Chloe began packing up her equipment and preparing to leave, Bobby started what he described as a serious conversation about our future together. The footage captured Chloe's confused response as Bobby confessed his romantic feelings and his belief that their professional partnership was actually a courtship. Chloe's response was gentle but firm. She explained that she valued their working relationship but was not interested in anything romantic. She emphasized her commitment to maintaining professional boundaries and suggested they focus on the success of the Real Hope project. Her response was measured, kind, and completely appropriate for the situation. Bobby's reaction was not. The video showed Bobby becoming increasingly agitated as Chloe continued to politely decline his advances. He accused Chloe of leading him on through their professional collaboration and claimed that her friendliness during their partnership had been deliberately romantic. When Chloe attempted to leave, Bobby physically blocked her path to the exit. What happened next, according to the video evidence and Bobby's eventual confession, was what prosecutors would describe as a crime of passion committed by someone who had completely lost touch with reality. Bobby's obsession with Chloe had created a fantasy relationship that existed only in his mind, and Chloe's rejection shattered that fantasy in a way that triggered explosive violence. The medical examiner's report, based on evidence recovered from the community center and Bobby's property, indicated that Chloe died from blunt force trauma consistent with being struck with a heavy object. Investigators believe Bobby used a trophy from the community center's display case. Ironically, an award recognizing his volunteer service to local youth. After Chloe's death, Bobby spent several hours attempting to cover up the crime. Security footage shows him moving between different areas of the community center throughout the night, presumably cleaning the scene and disposing of evidence. He moved Chloe's body to his vehicle and transported it to a remote location in the hills outside Millbrook Valley, where investigators would later recover her remains based on information provided during Bobby's confession. The most disturbing aspect of Bobby's cover-up was how he continued to maintain his public persona in the days following Chloe's murder. He attended the volunteer search parties he had organized. He comforted Chloe's family members. He gave interviews to local news stations expressing his concern for Chloe's safety and his hope that she would be found alive. Bobby Stevens was arrested on October 24, 2023, at the community center where he was conducting his regular Wednesday evening youth basketball practice. Parents who had trusted Bobby with their children watched in shock as he was led away in handcuffs, still wearing the volunteer coordinator polo shirt that had made him a recognizable figure throughout Millbrook Valley. The arrest sent shockwaves through the community that went far beyond typical crime-related fear. This wasn't a stranger danger situation or a case of domestic violence behind closed doors. This was someone who had been the face of community service, the person parents called when they needed help with their children, the man who had organized birthday parties for seniors and Christmas drives for struggling families. Local parent Brenda Foster, whose children had been coached by Bobby for 3 years, told reporters that the arrest felt like finding out your own father was a criminal. The psychological impact on the community was profound. If Bobby Stevens could hide such darkness behind his volunteer work, who else might be concealing dangerous obsessions or violent tendencies? During his interrogation, Bobby initially maintained his innocence, claiming he had never seen Chloe after she left the community center on October 15th. But when investigators presented him with the video evidence from his own devices, Bobby's carefully constructed facade finally crumbled. His confession, recorded over a 6-hour interrogation session, revealed the depth of his delusion about his relationship with Chloe. Bobby genuinely believed that Chloe had been romantically interested in him throughout their collaboration. He interpreted her professional enthusiasm about the Real Hope Project as personal affection. He convinced himself that her social media posts were coded messages meant specifically for him. When Detective Bennett asked Bobby why he thought Chloe would be interested in a romantic relationship with him, his response revealed the narcissistic thinking that had driven his obsession. He explained that he was obviously the most accomplished man Chloe had ever worked with, and that his community leadership role made him exactly the kind of stable, successful man that young women like Chloe are looking for. Bobby showed no understanding of how his behavior constituted stalking or harassment. He described his months of surveillance and documentation as getting to know the woman I was going to marry. He referred to his collection of Chloe's photos and videos as keeping memories of our time together. Even after confessing to Chloe's murder, Bobby continued to describe their professional relationship in romantic terms. The psychological evaluation conducted before Bobby's trial diagnosed him with narcissistic personality disorder and what experts classified as erotomania, a delusional belief that another person is in love with them. Dr. Helen Richardson, the forensic psychologist who evaluated Bobby, explained that his volunteer work had likely provided him with constant validation and admiration that fed his narcissistic tendencies. But Dr. Richardson was careful to emphasize that mental illness does not excuse Bobby's actions. His crime was not the result of a sudden psychological break, but the culmination of months of deliberate stalking, planning, and boundary violations. The evidence showed that Bobby was capable of distinguishing right from wrong. He spent considerable effort covering up his crime and maintaining his public image after Chloe's murder. Bobby Stevens pleaded guilty to first-degree murder on March 18, 2024, accepting a plea deal that spared him the death penalty in exchange for his cooperation in locating Chloe's remains and providing details about his crime. He was sentenced to life in prison without the possibility of parole. During his sentencing hearing, Bobby was given the opportunity to address Chloe's family and the court. His statement, which lasted nearly 20 minutes, focused primarily on his own suffering and his claim that he never meant for anyone to get hurt. He described Chloe's rejection as the most painful moment of my life and suggested that his actions were the result of emotional devastation rather than calculated violence. Chloe's parents, William and Janet Anderson, both spoke at the sentencing hearing. Their victim impact statements painted a picture of a young woman who had overcome her own struggles with anxiety and depression to build a platform dedicated to helping others facing similar challenges. They described Chloe's excitement about the Real Hope Project and her genuine belief that she was making a difference in her community. Janet Anderson's statement to the court was particularly powerful. Chloe trusted Bobby Stevens because our community trusted Bobby Stevens. She believed she was safe because he wore the uniform of service and carried the reputation of selflessness. The person who killed our daughter wasn't a stranger lurking in the shadows. He was someone our community had elevated and celebrated for his contributions to our children's lives. The impact of Bobby's crime on Millbrook Valley cannot be overstated. The community center where he had volunteered for 15 years closed temporarily after his arrest, with many parents expressing concerns about the safety protocols and background check procedures for volunteers. Several programs Bobby had established were discontinued, leaving gaps in services for local children and seniors. The Real Hope Project, which Chloe and Bobby had worked together to establish, was ultimately completed using the funds Chloe's audience had contributed. Chloe's parents established the Chloe Anderson Foundation, which provides mental health resources for young content creators and advocates for better safety protocols in online collaboration. Perhaps most significantly, Bobby's crime sparked a broader conversation about the signs of unhealthy obsession and the vulnerability of content creators to stalking and harassment. Chloe's story became a case study in how parasocial relationships, one-sided emotional connections formed with media personalities, can escalate into dangerous obsession. The Millbrook Valley community implemented new volunteer screening procedures that include psychological evaluations and regular monitoring of individuals working with vulnerable populations. Local law enforcement developed specialized training for investigating crimes involving social media and digital stalking. But the questions Bobby Stevens' crime raises extend far beyond policy changes and safety protocols. How do we balance the need for community volunteers with the responsibility to protect vulnerable individuals? How do we identify the warning signs of obsession and delusion in people who otherwise appear to be model citizens? What makes Bobby's case particularly disturbing is how effectively he used his volunteer work as both a cover for his nature and a means of gaining access to his victim. His community service wasn't separate from his criminal behavior, it was integral to it. The same qualities that made him trusted by the community, his dedication, his attention to detail, his ability to connect with people, were the qualities that made him a particularly dangerous predator. As true crime enthusiasts, we often look for the obvious red flags, the warning signs that seem clear in hindsight. But Bobby Stevens' case reminds us that evil doesn't always announce itself with obvious markers. Sometimes the most dangerous people are those who have learned to weaponize our trust, who understand that a reputation for service can provide cover for the darkest intentions. The story of Chloe Anderson and Bobby Stevens forces us to confront uncomfortable questions about how we evaluate the people in our communities, how we protect vulnerable individuals from those who would exploit their trust, and how we maintain the community connections that make life meaningful without exposing ourselves to those who would abuse those connections. Chloe Anderson was just 22 years old when her life was cut short by someone she trusted, someone her community had trusted for 15 years. Her death reminds us that the price of community safety is eternal vigilance, not just against obvious threats, but against those who hide their darkness behind facades of service and respectability. What do you think about the warning signs that were missed in this case? How do you balance trust in your community with healthy skepticism about people's motives? Share your thoughts in the comments below, and remember to subscribe for more investigations into the cases that remind us how important it is to protect the vulnerable people in our communities. The next time you see someone being celebrated for their community service, remember Chloe Anderson's story. Remember that good works can sometimes hide dark intentions, and that our responsibility to each other includes not just appreciation for those who serve, but accountability for ensuring that service comes from genuine compassion rather than hidden agendas. Chloe's voice was silenced, but her message about mental health awareness and community support continues through the foundation established in her honor. In the end, perhaps the best way to honor her memory is to remain vigilant against those who would exploit the trust that makes communities possible, while continuing to believe in the genuine good that people can do when their service comes from authentic care rather than selfish obsession.